Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from, and welcome to another one of our Kneat Insights webinars. This is a very special one because we are partnering with BW Design Group to hear from them some of their thoughts on powering process validation through AI. Now, we'll get to our main topics in just a moment, but I want to welcome you to our webinar. If you haven't been here before, if you're unfamiliar with how some of our things work, I just want to run you through some quick housekeeping. So to the right of your video screen, you'll see some panels. There are three of them. There's chat. You can type in any messages you have, any thoughts, any opinions you have throughout the webinar. We definitely want to hear them and engage with you and hear from you as well. So that is how you'll be able to interact with us today. You don't have a microphone, you don't have your camera, you're in listen only mode, but feel free to interact in the chat. Let us know you're here, let us know where you're calling in from, and engage with us throughout the presentation. Our speakers will be able to see your messages as well while they're talking. Our second button there is a poll. So in just a few more minutes, we'll be running an interactive poll. It's already up and running now, so you can go ahead and answer that ahead of time if you want, but we'll get to that in just a few minutes. Finally, the Q&A button is there. You can put in your questions for our panelists, for our speakers today, at any time that you have them. Whenever they come up, go ahead and put those questions in. We'll have a few minutes at the end of the presentation where we will answer as many of those questions as possible. If we don't get through them, don't worry, we will get you answers, and you'll see that in our follow-up. We'll have someone from Kneat reach out with those answers so that you'll still get the information that you're looking for. But like I said, we'll get to as many as possible with our speakers today at the end of the presentation, so stick around for that. At the end of the webinar, I'll have some ways that you can give us feedback, but our feedback, or your feedback rather, is very important to us. We love to hear that. It's what we depend on to know how we can improve and what topics you want to hear coming up. Thanks, Rory Lennon from CQV, Gerardo, Sebastian from Germany. Welcome. We truly have a global audience today. I love to see that. So you can always email us your questions, your feedback, your thoughts, what you want to hear from our Kneat webinars at info@kneat.com. That's info@kneat.com. So that's with our housekeeping. Stop on this copyright and disclaimer statement for just a bit. And I am really glad, really honored to have joining us from BW Design Group, the Senior Validation Engineer, Alyssa Burke. We'll hear from Alyssa on her presentation about AI and process validation in just a minute. And then we'll also hear from Joe Azzarella, Kneat's own customer success engineer, to hear some of the Kneat perspective on that as well. Both of them will be joining us in just a minute, and I will let them give more of an introduction and more of their background as well. But I want to make sure that we get through everything that we need to before we hear from them. Can you see the presentation? We can see the presentation. Hopefully you can, Gerardo. Make sure to refresh if something's not coming through. So a little bit about our agenda today. We've already gone through some housekeeping. We'll hear about Kneat as a company and Kneat Gx as a product very briefly. Alyssa will run us through a little bit about BW Design Group and who they are, what her background is, and then go through the featured presentations. There are some key talking points there that I'll let her address a little bit later. And then, like I mentioned, we'll have that Q&A at the end, so stick around to get your questions answered. But here's the time for the interactive poll that we were talking about. So this poll is active. Right now, go ahead and hit the polls button on the side of your screen to the right of your video there and answer our poll. We want to know where you are on your journey to digitizing validation. This is something we ask every webinar. We want to check in and see where you are on that stage. It just helps us gear some of our topics to where you are. So a large 75% of people tuning in right now have multiple projects ongoing, being delivered digitally. They're considering how to scale maybe. 11%, it's shifting, 15% now are about to launch. And then a smaller percentage, about 10 each, have initial discovery and starting today. These are great metrics to see. These are really important because we are talking to your process validation and how you can validate anything digitally and how AI is going to factor into that. So it's great to see that we really have an audience running the gamut between starting with their validation or validating digitally today to some projects being delivered digitally elsewhere, and maybe people are considering how to scale. So we really, really do run the gamut. I'll go ahead and show these on the screen here and publish these results. We've got about 10% starting today, 12% on that initial discovery, 10% again about to launch, and then 67% we landed on with some projects ongoing and they're considering how to scale. That is great. Thank you, everyone, for participating in that poll. Let us know more about that in the chat, where you are, what your experience is with digital validation. While I talk about Kneat. So Kneat is a global organization. Kneat Solutions is who we are. We're a global organization headquartered in Ireland, but with operations throughout the world. We're truly a global company. We are publicly listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange and not only hold ourselves to a high governance standard, but that publicly listed status holds us to a high standard of governance as well for our security, for our product, and for everything. And you'll see that quality come through in a few different ways. We are a validation platform for life science companies to validate efficiently, simply, and validate any work process across multiple sites. So we are the validation platform of 8 of the top 10 life sciences companies around the world, and that includes 3 of the 4 COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers. So you know that you can trust Kneat's validation when it comes to a high importance product that needs to hit the market quickly and be correct on the first time. We have 40,000 plus users in the software as a service platform with 100 plus customers located across 350 locations around the world. 40 plus certified global partners such as BW Design Group, who we'll hear from today. And all of our development is done in-house. That's, again, talking about those high standards of governance that we keep ourselves to. All of our development is done in-house. We don't outsource anything, and that's for quality and security reasons. We are very serious about our security, keeping ISO compliant and certified year-round with everything that we do. So that is the company Kneat. Kneat Gx is the product. That is our software as a service validation lifecycle management platform that digitizes validation from end to end, enabling regulated companies, hopefully like yourselves or the ones that you work with, to make validation easier, faster, and smarter. All of that is to say, everything that you used to do on paper, in binders, lugging paper around from warehouses to production facilities to offices is all now done digitally. It can all be accessed from any smart device that can access the internet that you can put your credentials into anywhere in the world from wherever you are with your credentials. That is Kneat Gx. So now you know when we're talking about Kneat Solutions as a company and Kneat Gx, that is what we're talking about. But that's everything that I have to get through. That's all of my preamble, and I know we're all wanting to get to the main presentation. So I really want to welcome Alyssa and Joe here, who will be talking about optimizing validation process and integrating Pharma 4.0 and AI into the process as well. Alyssa, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, your backgrounds, and then kick us off today.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction. As was mentioned, my name's Alyssa Burke. I'm a senior validation engineer at Berry-Waymiller Design Group. My educational background is in biomedical engineering, and I have worked in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology sectors for the past 5 years, with a focus mainly on site startups, tech transfers, and process validation, which is obviously why we're talking about this today. And I'll get into Design Group a little bit in one of my first slides. I'll pass it over to Joe to introduce himself.
Sure. Thanks, Alyssa. I'm Joe Azzarella. I'm the customer success engineer here for Kneat. So my position within Kneat is really to help customers make sure that their needs are met as we develop new features, to understand your feedback. And prior to that, my career was in process validation, technology transfer, regulatory affairs. So I'm here today because a lot of these topics are near and dear to my heart.
All right, great. So a little bit more about Design Group. Design Group is a fully integrated engineering consulting company. We have offices all around the US as well as in India. And we're actually the only professional services firm that's born from a manufacturing technology company, which is our parent company, Berry-Waymiller. We provide a wide array of services from life sciences, which is probably what most people here today are interested in, but also food and beverage, industrial, semiconductor industries, to name a few. Our full stack capabilities include engineering, architecture and design, construction management, packaging systems, control systems integration, enterprise technology, and of course, regulatory compliance, which is what I work in. That involves commissioning and qualification of your facilities, your equipment, your processes, quality engineering, process improvements, pharmaceutical process development, scale up and tech transfer. And as was mentioned, we are a Kneat digital validation partner. So we can also help with implementing or working through Kneat at your company. And that way, we're a one-stop shop for all aspects of product commercialization in the life science market. With that being said, we'll kick off today's webinar. So today's webinar is on optimizing validation processes by integrating Pharma 4.0 innovations. The goal really is to explore how advanced technologies can enhance efficiency and ensure compliance in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries. We're going to cover an overview of the four industrial revolutions, just a quick history lesson to sort of understand where we are in that timeline, the benefits of Pharma 4.0, as well as some of those barriers to implementation, an overview of the different types of machine learning, specifically commonly used models for evaluating efficacy, as well as feedback mechanisms that help us with continuous improvement of the models, and ending on a focus on applications within the process validation lifecycle. All of this will be a generally introductory approach. Obviously, my background is not in computer science. I'm really trying to gear this information towards validation quality professionals to help when you are approaching process validation and how you can sort of modernize that process. So over on the slide, you'll see an overview of our four industrial revolutions. First two, fairly simple, mechanization through water and steam power, very initial discoveries of drug companies, and then mass production electricity, which obviously brought around a surge in pharmaceutical production, and the Pure Food and Drug Act, which eventually becomes the FDA. The third revolution is known as the information age. It started around the mid-20th century, and it's our digital revolution of computers and automation. That's where we really see a huge boom in pharmaceutical breakthroughs, and of course, correlating with that, a huge increase in the number of regulations that coincide with that innovation. It's actually in the 1950s that AI research began, but obviously it's nothing like the power of what we have today. And then finally, we are currently in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, also known as Industry 4.0, which is what we'll be focusing on today. This era focuses on smart and autonomous systems that are fueled by data and artificial intelligence. So in the last few years, as I'm sure most of us know, the power of big data has led to massive strides in machine learning and an acceleration of technology platforms, making them more accessible to the broader population. But it should be noted that historically, the pharmaceutical industry has been on average about 25 years behind other industries when it comes to adopting these technologies. That's due in large part to the high amount of regulation and some fear about how to approach that and work around it. That being said, the FDA did issue guidances on using process analytical technology as early as 2004, and they've remained adamant on trying to foster innovation with the Emerging Tech Program in 2014, which really aims to discuss and identify and resolve potential issues that may arise when you're developing and implementing novel technologies. So, if you are less familiar with the term Pharma 4.0, it's an ISPE branded term. It's the pharmaceutical industry's response to Industry 4.0. So what it does is it integrates these cutting edge technologies that we've seen arise in the last 20 or so years, such as the Internet of Things, big data, artificial intelligence, in order to create more agile and efficient and compliant processes. It's really about leveraging digital solutions to transform that entire life cycle of pharmaceutical products, utilizing a more holistic control strategy. So some common components that make up Pharma 4.0, you'll see on the screen, electronic documentation and validation, such as Kneat, use of private and public clouds, robotics, automated guided vehicles, virtual reality training, big data, machine learning, supply chain monitoring, predictive maintenance, to name a few. And today we're really going to focus on the highlighted concepts shown above, due to the possible impact on process efficiency and what's generally seen as lower levels of implementation across the industry. So we'll spend most of our time talking specifically about machine learning as a subset of AI and how that can be used in conjunction with real-time monitoring and process validation. So as we've mentioned, the benefits of Pharma 4.0 are vast. It enhances efficiency and productivity. It improves quality and compliance through real-time monitoring and predictive maintenance. We can reduce costs and reduce downtime, leading to faster time to market. Also allowing for better supply chain management, which can have those same effects. It allows for increased flexibility and adaptability. Better resource optimization, which allows us to have enhanced innovation, especially in the age of personalized medicine, as that is becoming more common as gene therapy and similar technologies emerge. But that being said, despite its many benefits, implementation of these advanced technologies in the life science industry is still lagging behind the other industries, as I mentioned. Reasons for lack of implementation include, first, having this all or nothing mentality, which makes it fairly hard to conceptualize implementation. So this idea that your process has to be all driven by AI, all advanced, or not at all, rather than transforming bits and pieces of your process and taking more of a stepwise approach to implementation. We also have challenges with older facilities and outdated equipment and procedures that make that challenge even greater because they require bigger upgrades in order to actually be able to implement advanced technologies. Obviously, initial investment costs can be high with unknown return on investment. As mentioned before, we have a lot of concerns regarding regulatory compliance because this is the great unknown. It's a new area that most companies are approaching. And technology validation might look a little different from traditional validation. And then, of course, with other industries, data security concerns are going to remain high, and a culture shift will be necessary to allow for adaptability. So working around some of that fear that people might have about AI and job displacement. Joe?
Yeah, just to add a little bit here, especially on that last point when we're talking about vendor dependence and it potentially limiting your flexibility. It's always going to be an issue since you're entering a partnership with someone for a very long time. And obviously at Kneat, we are the digital validation solution, but we do, have industry experts from in some of these potential barriers like data security or regulatory challenges. So again, I guess my advice for everyone listening today is, as you're making this journey forward and looking at these Pharma 4.0 principles, it's pretty important to build kind of a framework of experts and know which of your potential partners have SMEs that you can rely on, as opposed to potentially being in a long-term commitment without the flexibility to make the changes that you need as time progresses.
Great. So now that we have an understanding of an overview of Pharma 4.0, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into machine learning. As a reminder, this is going to be very introductory. I'm trying to simplify it. There will be a little math involved. But the goal here is really to provide an understanding of the fundamentals so that you can think through how you'd apply it to pharmaceutical manufacturing without having to be the computer science expert designing these algorithms. So machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence that involves training algorithms to learn from data and make decisions or predictions from patterns in that data. Again, there's many benefits that this can provide. We're not yet at the point of having AI run all of our manufacturing processes, but it still has significant benefits in the pharmaceutical industry. So there are three types of machine learning: supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. And we're going to explore these with a simplified example of visual inspection system of a tablet. In a supervised learning, your algorithm will be supplied with training data that has corresponding labels. So in this case, we have drug A, and not drug A being broken tablets or drugs of a different type. So in this case, the algorithm is told what to do with drug A, what constitutes as not drug A, and then when it receives test data, it's able to sort them appropriately, fairly simply. When you move on towards unsupervised learning, you're removing a step of control from the process in that the algorithm is receiving unlabeled data to train from. So in this case, it will receive that same input data set, but not the categories to sort them into. And so it might sort them into 3 categories as shown on the screen, such as whole tablet A's, broken tablet A's, and tablet B's. It might sort them into 2 categories, one being A, one being B. And then finally, you have reinforcement learning, which really builds off of unsupervised learning by using rewards and punishment to categorize inputs as either good or bad. So in this case, the algorithm first sorts all of the red tablets together and separates them from the blue tablets. It will receive a reward for separating the blue tablets, but penalized for combining the red tablets with broken tablets. So then it goes back and it learns that it needs to split up that first category, and it might create 3 separate categories as we saw in the second example. At that point, it'll be rewarded for having your whole tablet A's completely separate, but penalized for separating your broken tablets and your tablet B's. And then it will take that feedback and know, again, in its third attempt, that it's going to have 2 categories, putting the whole drug A separate from not drug A. So those are the 3 general categories of machine learning. Now they can be used in a variety of different models. Today we're just going to focus on 4. The list is never ending with varying complexity, but these are some of the more common ones that you'll see and what some more advanced models build off of. So we're going to discuss neural networks, support vector machines, decision trees, and random forest models. Neural networks are obviously inspired by the nervous system in living beings. A neural network consists of interconnected nodes organized into multiple layers. So your input layer receives the data or the parameters, and it can pass it on to these hidden layers. Those work, there might be various in numbering, and they work in a function to create weights and biases on your data in order to shift what the output might be. So easiest way to think about this is in a linear equation of y equals mx plus b. Your weights determine the strength and the direction, being the m in your equation, and your biases would shift the function, so being the b in the linear equation. And then the output layer, when reached, will predict your final results. So during training, what you're doing is the neural network will forward propagate and predict your results, and then those predicted results are going to be compared to your actual results, and a loss will be calculated to determine how accurate or how far off the results are. The network will then back propagate to adjust weights and biases in order to move closer to the actual results and improve the model's accuracy. So that practice can happen multiple times until you get as close as you would like. At that point, saying you would enter a new test data set to make sure that all the predictions are accurate when it receives a new pool of data. Support vector machines are slightly more complex. They are a supervised learning model used often for regression and classification tasks. So that this model finds an optimal hyperplane, which will classify your data points. So it's a decision boundary that separates data points into different classes. If you're in a 2D space, it would be a line. If you're in a 3D space, it would be a plane. The hyperplane itself is defined by its support vectors, which are the most critical data points that define the position and orientation of that plane, and then also the margin, which is the distance between the plane and its closest data points. The goal here is really to maximize the margin for a stronger model. And now SVMs, they work well with nonlinear complex data. You could see them being very beneficial when it comes to specific personalized medicine. What they do is they use a concept called kerneling in their training process, where they are able to transform your data into a higher dimensional space, making it easier to separate it into classes. So very simple example on the slide, you can see in 2D space, you can't draw a simple line through that data, but if you transform it into 3 dimensions, it's easy to see a separation between your 2 categories of data. Next up, we have decision trees. Arguably, I think one of the easiest models to understand because they're pretty much a simple flowchart, just growing complexity to what we're used to seeing. Each node here represents a test on a feature, and each leaf would represent a decision. So At each node, the tree will select which feature best splits the data into classes. As you can see on the right, in this case, a decision tree is being used to predict batch quality during the process rather than waiting until final product testing. So here, batches are sorted based on temperature, pH, and mixing time, and the model is trained on a data set that will include both high quality and low quality impacts. So on the right would be an image of the training data set. That each node, the tree will select whichever feature best splits the data into classes, and then when it's fed a new pool of data, it will sort it appropriately in order to flag what data is, or what batches are high quality and what batches are lower quality. Decision trees are beneficial because, as I mentioned, they're pretty easy to understand and explain and follow, and they also require little pre-processing, whereas I mentioned SVMs before frequently require pre-processing transformations to move them into a different dimensional space. But decision trees do struggle a lot with noisy data, and because it's this constant process of splitting, they can overfit data beyond what you need, and therefore making your results more muddled. And then finally, we have random forests, which is really just taking decision trees up to a higher level. So a random forest merges together multiple decision trees to have a higher accuracy than a single decision tree. As such, they do tend to be less sensitive to noise and outliers in your data, but they can be very computationally intensive and it requires a lot more memory and training time. So whenever you're picking your model, you need to evaluate which model would be a better fit for your data. Is it necessary to take a model that's going to be more complex and require more time to develop? But each tree, in the case of a random forest, is trained by taking bags of data, subsets of data from that original sample pool, randomly selected to reduce variance and overfitting. And so then each tree sorts in its own way to create an output. And as you can see on the right, each tree might come up with a different decision. And at the end, the final decision is made from either choosing the majority. In this case, it's a yes or no. You choose the majority. If it's numerical output, it would be an average of the outputs of all your trees. So we've covered the different types of machine learning and a few examples of models. And another way to define machine learning models is between the type of tasks that they address. So I mentioned before regression tasks and classification tasks with a few of the examples. Four of the more common task categories, and we'll look at them today, are regression tasks, classification tasks, anomaly detection, which is sometimes seen as a subset of classification tasks, but has significant importance when we get into continued process verification later. So we'll look at it separately. And then time series forecasting. Each category of task might be evaluated slightly differently or retrained differently. So we'll go through those each separately and see how you can further improve your models and also assess your model for accuracy. So the first and probably the most familiar category is regression tasks. Regression modeling is a way to find a mathematical relationship between your input and your output. You're going to predict a continuous numeric value. So we have four main key metrics here that we use to evaluate these models. That's the mean absolute error, the mean squared error, root mean squared error, and the R-squared value. The error values average differences between the model to predict what actually happens, regardless of whether it's too high or too low. And then when you have your mean squared error, you are squaring that in order to have bigger impact from your bigger errors on your score. Consequently, the root mean squared error brings that back into a subset of units that makes it a little easier to understand because it's in the same units as your output variable. And R squared is how well your predictions match your data, with a perfect score being 1. So in a very simple example of determining the impact of quantity of drug A, process time, and temperature on a drug assay, we're going to use a very simple regression model, in this case a linear one. Obviously, generally you would be using machine learning models for more of a multivariate, more complex process, but each parameter here is going to receive a coefficient that shows its impact on the final assay result. So in this case, the model runs through all the data and it sorts through and finds that, if you could see in that output in the middle, process time, quantity of drug A, and temperature have 3 different coefficients, with the quantity of drug A having the greatest impact on your assay because it has that coefficient of 2.5, while the others are 0.5 and 1.2. When assessing your model for accuracy, you also have this output at the top. You see the mean squared error, and that's telling us how accurate our model was in interpreting the data. But you need to be able to take in your target variable in order to actually understand what that error value means. So if your target value has a fairly small magnitude, 0 to 10, that mean squared error of 25 would be very high. If the target variable is much larger, like 1,000 or 100, that 25 could be quite low and would be seen as acceptable. And then, of course, you have an R-squared value there of 0.98, which suggests your model used explains a large portion of the variance. So as is with most of these models, if you're not happy with the results during evaluation, further measures need to be taken to retrain the model, whether that be introducing more data, providing some positive and negative feedback in order to go through this iteration process once more and hopefully get better output. The next category of tasks are classification models. They predict the correct label of given input data. So they're generally evaluated for accuracy, precision, sensitivity, or recall. They're used synonymously. F1 score and the area under the curve of an ROC curve. Accuracy, self-explanatory. It's the percentage of correct predictions out of all predictions, and it's generally used for your overall performance of your model. Precision is the correct positive predictions out of all of your positive predictions, so it helps you avoid false alarms, while sensitivity or recall is a percentage of actual positives correctly identified by the model. Your F1 score will balance those precision and sensitivity to give a picture of both metrics, and then area under the curve helps evaluate how well the model can separate those classes. So here again, a different example is sorting syringes into accepted or rejected status based on fill volume, if a Lure cap is present, and having no bubbles in the solution. On the left, you'll see the equations below for precision and recall, just so that you can understand the difference between the two, as they can get a little confusing. And then to note that your F1 score, 1 would be your best case, 0 would be your worst case. So on the right, we can see that our accuracy is 92%. That is your overall accuracy of the model. In this example, we have two separate classes of data, accepted units and rejected units. So each class will receive individual values when you evaluate it. And then on your far right, you have a support column, which tells you how many true instances are actually in each class of the data set. So in this classification report, you can see that the model was better at predicting which syringes would be accepted than predicting which ones would be rejected. And when you look specifically at the accepted row, you see that precision is 95%, while recall is 92%, telling us that the model predicted 95% of the units to be accepted were actually accepted, while it correctly identified 92% of the accepted units. And then at the bottom, you have averages that are calculated across both classes of data. Next up, we have time series forecasting models. Time series forecasting is used to predict future values based on past observations, which can be helpful when we are predicting maintenance or forecasting product demand. These tasks are evaluated by mean absolute percentage error, your symmetric mean absolute percentage area, and then your AIC and your BIC values. So again, percentage error measures how accurate your forecasts are. The symmetric error is going to account for both overestimations and underestimations equally for a more balanced error value. And then the two different criterion are going to evaluate how well your model fits the data while considering its complexity, where a lower value will indicate a better model. So an easy example, determining when equipment maintenance should be performed based on the number of stoppages of your equipment per hour. So when you choose a threshold, you want to choose something based on historical data or learned experiences in order to avoid unnecessary downtime from performing maintenance too early, but also avoiding equipment failure. You can either choose that threshold value yourself, or you can also allow the model to recommend a threshold value. When evaluating the model with a test data set, we can see here that the error values, so the MAPE and the SMAPE, as I like to say, are both 4.5%, meaning that the model is on average 4.5% off from our true values. Then you have the two criterion values below that, which can be used. They are more useful when they're portrayed in relative with other models or with the model as it evolves. So if we are trending to see how the accuracy of the model has changed over time, or we're comparing multiple models to see which one is a better fit. And like I said, the lower value will likely be your better option. And then finally, we have anomaly detection models. Like I mentioned, they are a subclass of classification models that are used to find outliers or unusual patterns that may indicate a shift in our process. You can understand why that will be very helpful when it comes to continued process verification. And these models are evaluated for, similar to classification models, a true positive rate, false positive rate, and the area under the curve. Area under the curve measures overall how well your model distinguishes, and then again, your true positive rate is synonymous to sensitivity or recall, whereas your false positive rate indicates how often the model flags normal instances as anomalies. So if we use a model to detect anomalies in bioreactor pH to identify potential issues, you'll be training your model again on historical data and then evaluating on a test or validation data set to see how well it performs. When you have your true results and you compare them with the predicted results, the ROC curve, which is shown on the slide, can show you how well the model discriminates the data, where the false positive rate is along the x-axis and the true positive rate is along the y-axis. It shows performance trade-offs at varying thresholds. So as you increase your true positive rate by lowering your threshold, your false positive rate will also gradually increase, meaning you'll capture more anomalies, but you also increase the chance of incorrectly labeled anomalies. So you always want to see your curve above the diagonal because the diagonal is the line of random guessing. And the goal here is really to optimize your model to have a true positive rate as high as possible without significantly increasing your false positive rate. You can adjust thresholds as necessary in order to suit your process. And obviously, if you are not getting the answer you need, you go back and revise your model in order to move it towards that optimal goal. So that's the end of the majority of the math portion of the presentation. But besides mathematical or computational evaluations of models, some of the best learning we have when we evaluate models actually comes from feedback from humans. There's a number of different mechanisms that should be considered when you're implementing machine learning models in your process. The first category we have are more human-centric feedback mechanisms. So human in-the-loop feedback should be present in the implementation of all models. This role would be fulfilled by individuals with very strong statistical or computational backgrounds who really understand how those models work and are able to evaluate it and review it to make sure it stays on task, understanding when they need to challenge the model more or improve the model with additional data. Additionally, using user interface and experience tools such as dashboards can allow everyday users to explore the anomalies and trends and provide feedback. So, example of the maintenance team, they can view suggested maintenance on equipment from the model on a different specific dashboard, and then they can go check the equipment and mark on the dashboard whether the model was correct or not based on their in-person evaluation. From that, the model will then learn to adapt and be better at predicting maintenance in the future. We then have active learning, which is the model itself, knowing which data points it has the highest uncertainty with and flagging them for review, again, generally by that human professional, so that they say, I'm not very sure about this point, and someone will go and evaluate and label that specific point so the model can learn from its most challenging cases. We also have adaptive thresholds, as I just mentioned, especially with anomaly detection. Changing your threshold can be used by the model to regularly tune it based on feedback so that it's balancing that sensitivity and specificity, the true positive and negative rate, to get an optimal result. Then we have automated or continuous feedback. With self-evaluation, the model tracks which alerts are acted upon and which were false alarms and learns from that. So similar to the dashboard, but without the human input. It just requires a little more backtracking or reverse feedback from your equipment to see what was acted upon. And then it could also be set up to present a feedback form whenever an alert is sent out. So if it alerts that you have your processes trending towards being out of bounds, you could have a form that people could respond on, or periodic retraining, which can be performed both on a scheduled basis or on a more continuous basis. So on a scheduled basis, this might be an annual review to incorporate new data, avoid model drift. On a continuous basis, this is more incremental learning, where the model would continuously take in new data to update itself. And then finally, we have all the performance metrics that we discussed beforehand. Those are those numerical values such as precision, recall, F1 score, that can be tracked to mark areas of improvement or decline. And then we also have drift detection methods that can be implemented to detect changes in your data distribution or changes in the underlying relationship between parameters. So hopefully that provided a basic understanding of how machine learning models can work in different areas of the pharmaceutical manufacturing. We're going to now narrow our focus more onto process validation lifecycle itself, mainly working to optimize process parameters as well as maintain process control. So in stage 1, which is our process design, scientists will traditionally manually define ranges for each parameter, execute a series of experiments to optimize these parameters. Unfortunately, teams are generally limited by time and financial pressures, as I'm sure we know, which cause them to limit the scope of their experiments to a fraction of the possible parameter combinations, leading to a limited experimental scope. So if we use AI-driven predictive modeling in our stage 1 process validation, we can aggregate historical data from literature, previous similar products, and lab scale experiments. And then the AI model can process all that data to predict possible outcomes based on input parameters. Using this knowledge and feature selection, the model itself can perform thousands of simulations in order to test out a magnitude of pretty much all the possible parameter combinations you can have, and then suggest what the most promising parameter sets would be. Then your scientific team could take those most promising data sets and perform the actual lab scale experiments on it. Obviously, provide feedback if they don't seem to work as well, but simplifies the time and also allows for broader scope during the experimental and design stage of your process. It is important to note that models are only as good as their data. So power of your model could be limited based on a process if it has little historical data. But as I mentioned, models can be fed data from literature or previous similar products and then be fine-tuned with the process-specific parameters in those cases where you might not have as much historical data. Skipping ahead to stage 3, implementation of effective continued process verification programs are still somewhat limited in the industry. So this is once we've completed our process performance qualification, we are now trying to make sure we stay in a state of control in order to ensure we avoid drift and we're optimizing our process to deliver quality product. So current processes involve a high level of human time and energy. Generally, batches are still executed on paper or electronic batch records if you're lucky. And then we have quality samples, which are taken and analyzed. Those results are usually reported in some sort of lab information management system. You'll then, on a separate side, have deviations that are identified during processing or during the record review by quality. And then those are tracked usually in a completely separate piece of software or program. And then on an annual basis is what I've generally seen. Some places might do it more frequently. You assess your control of your process by defining control limits set on your historical data. Generally, those are set to 3 sigma based on the principles of Six Sigma. and they might be recalculated on an annual basis or whenever you have a significant increase in the amount of historical data. Then you generate your report, your CPV report, using statistical software usually, such as Minitab or Jump, to create those control charts and process capability analysis. Now it's at that point usually where you might identify additional deviations to your process control, so values that weren't necessarily outliers from your specification, but now they're showing as a lack of control in your process or shifts or trends in your data that indicates a change in process control. And at this point, we could be weeks, months down the line from when that batch was executed. So we're trying to move towards a proactive approach rather than reactive. And utilizing these Pharma 4.0 technologies can really help that happen. So as a reminder, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach. On the screen itself, we really focused on utilizing AI to execute the trending and anomaly detection, as well as being trained on historical data. And I sort of kept those middle stages as traditional steps that are still executed in traditional batch records. But in an ideal world, once everything was updated and integrated, you could use your process analytical technology to allow for real-time data capture rather than pulling that data from records and from your lab system and your deviation system. And then instead of processing the data after the fact, you'd be able to use advanced analytics to continuously process the data in real time. And that allows for that early detection in outliers or shifts. Additionally, AI could proactively detect and suggest process improvements based on insights from the data. Joe, do you have anything you'd like to add here?
Yeah, just one little thing to chime in. So this diagram does a fantastic job, right, of laying out the potential flow of data for that CPV process, keeping that Pharma 4.0 mindset. All I want to emphasize here for our audience today is that for each of these arrows, so for example, the movement of that batch execution data into a LIMS system, is to really spend the time to figure out what systems or what intermediaries are best for that particular application, as opposed to kind of a one-size-fits-all approach for this entire CPV process. Again, someone might have a plug-and-play solution, but it might not really meet all of your needs, and trying to win by convenience, isn't the best long-term idea. So it's more important to really look for something bespoke, find something that meets all of these individual arrows and individual needs that you're looking for, so that you have something that, again, is robust and kind of grows with you. That's it. Just my 2 cents there.
Yeah, thank you. And so, as was mentioned, utilizing that traditional CPV approach can lead to a lag in detection and a high rate also of false positives. So when we use traditional rules of control charts, you flag anything up out of 3 sigma as an outlier, you flag a number of data points as a shift or a trend, and that can lead to false positives because sometimes your process is just a little random. It also generally lacks multivariate data analysis due to the complexity, and has limited adaptability because everything is executed manually, or only as good as the person who is evaluating the data. With an AI integrated process, the system will continuously ingest data, like I said, from those sensors, identify normal operating ranges, identify complex correlations between those parameters, build a predictive profile of expected behavior, and employ adaptive techniques that detect subtle deviations. So on the right here, another simple broken down example where you have a process and your system's identified a minor but consistent increase in pH and dissolved oxygen. Both values are still well within their specification. They're both within their control limits, but the system has noted that the bioreactor has decreased airflow rate despite increasing the blower speed. Perhaps there are some fluctuations in pressure, and the system runs through the list of possible causes based on historical data from that company, as well as information it can find, in the web. Taking in all the information, it might note the age of the system or when maintenance was last performed and predict that the aeration system of that reactor is gradually clogging and suggest maintenance on the equipment. So that's sort of a way to view proactive control of your process as well as proactive maintenance with the advanced technologies, because without them, you likely wouldn't have noticed that pattern until either they went out of specification, as in the pH and the dissolved oxygen, or that clogging reached a point of process or equipment failure. So we're really trying to minimize downtime from errors that we could prevent. Additional examples we have of CPV include dynamically adjusting process parameters to account for variability from changes in raw material suppliers. So I think a lot of us saw in the case of COVID, supplier limitation can be something that will come up, and being able to adapt to changes is very important. It can also harness these large data lakes or digital twins to proactively suggest those process improvements. And then, since we have a little bit of time, not necessarily process validation related, but another point that I think is a good starting point if you're starting your journey into implementing machine learning and AI in your process is supply chain. So this is another area where you can make significant impact and save time and money with less risk to your process because you're somewhat further separated from the critical process parameters and the controls and regulations. So common supply chain challenges include a lack of real-time visibility, inefficient inventory management, unforeseen delays and disruptions. Again, think about the supply chain disasters that some of us are still impacted by from the COVID pandemic. And AI and machine learning can use predictive analytics based on analyzing historical sales data, current market trends, and other external factors in order to forecast demand. It can identify periods of high or low demand, capture the consistency or inconsistency of certain suppliers, and use that to adjust when you would be requesting restock. Also highlighting instances where inventory may run out so that you can predict your optimal inventory levels, reorder points, and quantities. Similar to the use of digital twins in process simulation, the system can also simulate supplier delays and predict how that might impact your inventory and your business so that you can proactively think about how to mitigate disruption to your process. So in conclusion, implementing Pharma 4.0 principles, especially machine learning models, can provide a number of benefits to a process, but it can be quite challenging and time consuming, and it poses a lot of new challenges for our teams involved. There are a variety of models, techniques, and systems that can be used when you're trying to create this holistic control strategy. And it's really important to find the right partner to assist with the knowledge gaps so that you can identify the best solutions for your specific organization's culture. And then finally, as mentioned at the end, continued process verification and or supply chain may be some of the better places to start in your implementation because they can offer some significant benefits with less risk than some of the other process stages. And they also have the opportunity to backfeed into those stages. So I hope everyone learned something and enjoyed the webinar today. And I believe we do have some time for questions. You can always reach out to me after the fact on LinkedIn or by email. I'll drop my email down in the chat. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alyssa, and thank you so much, Joe, for those great insights. Highly technical in there, so my head's still sort of in a whirl there, but we will go to some of our questions. I'll remind our audience, if you haven't put in your questions for Alyssa and Joe, now's the time to do so. Click on that Q&A button on the right side of your video to be able to put those in. You can also upvote or thumbs up any questions that you think are important that you want to be asked. If there are duplicate questions in here, I'll be taking the most popular ones first, so be sure to give that input so that you can see what questions are coming up. All right, so we've had a lot in here from Chris and Rory. I know I've seen their names a few times here. Here's a new one that just came up on top. So Rory asks, how does an AI tool get validated to ensure it meets GDP and data integrity / GAMP requirements?
That's a great question. So this really ties into, like I said, the fear and the sort of empty box still regarding regulatory guidance. Um, in the broad scheme of things, you should approach it similar to validating any other software and any other process or equipment. So when you are choosing to implement it, you need to understand your purpose and your scope. Um, Document step by step how the data is used to train the model, be collected and pre-processed. Show where your data integrity, I guess, guidelines are in place so that you're not having data leakage or data bias when you go and implement that model. And there are a number of good machine learning practices that are very similar to GDP and GMP, just specific to machine learning models. Similar to software requirements, you'll have to have version control of your model in order to assess any changes and make sure they're documented throughout the life cycle of that model. And then, like always, you'll use your change control process anytime you make changes to the model, approach it with a risk assessment and impact analysis, and then take proactive steps to make sure the model is as transparent as possible when it comes to compliance so that a regulatory body coming in can actually follow what you're saying and not looking at a algorithm that makes no sense to them.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that question, Rory, and thank you for the answer, Alyssa. So, next up, one from Christopher: is neural network AI essentially a self-tuning PID control system? And for those of us who might not know, what is a PID control system?
So I'm not as familiar with the term, but um, I assume we're talking about hardwiring PID control system, which works on a model to control outputs based on given inputs. So
Mhm.
my initial answer would be to view it as a fairly similar thing, where you are receiving different inputs and choosing to either move forward and then taking that feedback and moving backwards. But I'm happy to look into that a little bit more and get back to you.
Excellent. Joe, did you? It sounded like you. And
Yeah,
did you
it,
want to add
so
anything?
I I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean a neural network. I'll call it the advanced version of self-tuning PNID. Most of the PNID systems I've used before were all related to like controlling like a shelf temperature or a mixing speed or things like that. There you don't have very many inputs, and we're looking at a single output. I think with a neural network, we can definitely get into a lot more complicated and multivariate type things. Um, I think if you even looked into something like anything that you would use kind of a first principles approach for, you would use a neural network for. Whereas if it's something simple that you're keeping control of, you probably just stick with your PID loop.
Okay, excellent. We are coming up on the last couple minutes here. I want to make sure we get one question in here for you, Joe. So, from the source, what is Neat's approach to Pharma 4.0?
Sure. So it's a great question. And at the risk of having kind of a very long winded answer and taking up the rest of the time here, I'll try to keep it as concise as I can, right? So when we're talking Pharma 4.0, we have a variety of principles that we're looking at, whether it's machine learning, AI, electronic batch records, digital twins. Um, Currently I would say our approach is the same, right? We're here to understand that concept and become as well versed in it as possible so that we can best support our customers that are making those steps forward. So we're always trying to think of the best solution as it relates to digital validation. So our expertise in these topics is something that you'll continue to see in the future, whether it's through webinars like this, conferences, presentations, just other methods to let you know that we are paying attention to what's out there.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you so much, Joe. And yeah, I think that can maybe be a whole other topic for a webinar that we can get to. But really want to thank you again, Alyssa, Burke, and Joe Azzarella, and thank you to BW Design Group for allowing us to have Alyssa here for this hour or so. Really, really insightful presentation. I know AI is a big topic all throughout the tech space, and Pharma 4.0 is something that a lot of companies want to get into and something that is right on the horizon, if not already passing us. So, very insightful stuff. Really appreciate the presentation today. Thank you so much for joining us. Now I will move on to talking about some other things that Kneat has going on coming up. We have a demo webinar. If you haven't seen Kneat Gx itself in person, in being demonstrated, we definitely recommend you join us for our monthly demo, which is happening not tomorrow, but on Thursday. We have our monthly demo for August. You can see live, hands-on, what Kneat Gx does and be able to talk to one of our sales solutions engineers after the demo to ask your questions about it. You can also always reach out to us at info@kneat.com. That's info@kneat.com to set up a one-on-one personalized demo or get more information. I know we have a lot of anonymous questions in here. I did mention we will get to as many questions as possible, and those who have put their names on them will follow up with you after the webinar in the next couple days. For those who are anonymous, unfortunately, we can't, but feel free to reach out to info@kneat.com anytime. We also have a webinar coming up on September 11th, Driving Innovation with Validation 4.0. You can find more information about that online at kneat.com/events, news and events. It's on there. If you want to see us in person, there are a couple chances to do so. The Pharma Manufacturing Conference, September 22nd in Berlin. Come see us there. Kneat will have a booth and be demonstrating Kneat Gx. As well as in the States on the East Coast, ISPE Boston's product show on October 2nd. Kneat will be there. But of course, I added a link to the chat as well. We want to hear your feedback. Go ahead and scan this QR code on the screen now as well. We want to hear your feedback on the webinar. What did you like? What can we do better next time? And most importantly, what topics do you want to hear? Because we want to make sure we're hitting the things that you are interested in. Do you want to hear more about AI? Do you want to bring Alyssa back? Do you want Joe to delve into some of the Kneat's implementations of Pharma 4.0? Let us know what you want to hear about, and we can schedule those in as we're coming up. We're already planning Q4 for this year and Q1 for 2025's webinars. So let us know what you want to hear. Really appreciate you all joining us. I know we're a little bit over time here, so I want to give you back time in your day. But thank you so much for joining us on another Kneat webinar. We hope to see you next time. Have a great day.